Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me in this episode, I have an award-winning diversity, equity and inclusion leader, speaker, consultant and trainer with global clients from PwC to Verizon to Toyota to Bloomberg. His new book is Showing Up: How Men Can Become Effective Allies in the Workplace. Ray Arata, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here, Ray. Pleasure to have you here. And I was speaking probably on the off-show conversation that I've been into quality work and that, with the fire service and had worked together as, a trade union, as a firefighter and trying to get stuff worked and done. But this book is an eye-opener, really, because it's talking to men saying, look, and it is some home truths, isn't it, really, it's male-dominated in the fire service, so it's pretty much, a male-privileged job, isn't it, really, when you get females that, they're in it. But then perhaps you could tell me more about that. But before that, tell us your own backstory, how you got into this and why you got into doing this work and writing the book, and then we'll have a dip into the chapters and what the book's about.
Sure. So there's a couple parts to my story. The first one is highly personal, which I'm happy to share, and that has to do with what I call my 1-2 punch wake-up call in my life. In 1999, when I was married with 3 kids, having just moved into a brand new custom rebuilt home, while I was a financial advisor for retirement plans to high-tech companies in Silicon Valley, I got the "I don't love you anymore" speech at 1:00 in the morning by the mother of my 3 kids.
Right.
And 6 weeks later, my manager in the financial services business kind of called me out for some of my behavior. And the way he spoke to me and what he said was like, "Ray, sometimes you act, so out of control, and picking up the phone and yelling at somebody doesn't work here." And somehow it landed. And I said, "You know what? I've heard what you said to me by my wife in so many words, and now I'm hearing it at work. I think I need to do something."
Right.
And he said, "Close the door," and he hands me a brochure, and I look at this brochure, and it says Men's Weekend. And I'm like, what the bleep is this? And he smiles and he goes, and he winks at me and he says, "I can't tell you, but it changed my life. And here, call my wife, she'll verify." And I'm like, "No, I don't need to call your wife." So on trust, I went to Houston, Texas, of all places, because there wasn't a weekend local to me. And I showed up on this weekend, and unbeknownst to me at the time, and I can tell you now, it was an initiatory, non-denominational weekend that basically had me look at, understand, and own that the pained little boy in me was driving the adult bus, and the impact was affecting those who I loved. And so when I got a chance to do some healing, just like the other 40 men that were there, in a safe container, strong masculine container, I left that weekend. And when we left, they said, "You're all going to be on cloud 9, flying high. You're going to go back to your lives. We strongly recommend you join a men's group, because life's going to come at you pretty much every day after this weekend." And think of it as the emotional gymnasium. And because what all of us had learned to do, because men, we don't get a book. And that's what my first book was about, on how to connect to our emotions, how to have what I now call a conscious heart and a conscious mind. And so this journey set me on my way, which is now amassed somewhere in the 15,000 hour working with men, 55 men's weekends, maximum security prisons. That was part A of my story. Part B is I met a diversity and inclusion consultant, a woman who knew I was writing a book, and she said, "You really have something here. Men in corporate America need to hear from you. But first, I want you to go to a women's leadership event and just listen. You might be the only guy there." And I was, and I listened. And that's when all that stuff my mom told me about being second born in an Italian family, where all the privileges went to her older brother because he was a boy. And like, for example, she wanted to play sports. No, she wanted to go to college. No, he did. All that kind of stuff. And then I thought about my wife, oldest of 7 kids in an Italian family where the youngest brother was running the business. And then finally, my daughter was going to be graduating from Duke with a degree in computer science. So it was kind of like a man in the mirror moment. And I decided, okay, I need to do something. I wasn't sure. So I started speaking at women's leadership events. And then what I call my healthy impatience, it really started to rise up in me. And I said, somebody needs to do something. Somebody needs to do something. Maybe this person needs to do something. So I had this idea, and I reached out to a bunch of people I knew in corporate, mainly men. And I said, I've got this idea. I want to advance healthy masculinity into the leadership conversation, and I want to do a conference. There's no conference for men other than Christian conferences for men. And I want to do this, and what do you think? And they're like, sounds like a great idea. So with that, Genentech, Kaiser Permanente, Pricewaterhouse, and several other companies sponsored the first Better Man Conference in 2016. Michael Kimmel spoke. I had met Sheryl Sandberg and Roseanne Arquette and Jennifer Siebel Newsom backstage at Michael Kimmel's International Masculinities Conference and asked them for their support. And so that was 6 years ago. So here we are, fast forward, 13 conferences later, and spreckled along the way, Time's Up, Me Too, COVID, Black Lives Matter movement, all of these seemingly separate events have come together to form what I call a perfect storm, which has now put the spotlight on the majority, men. Now, the minority of men, the bad apples, the one we read about in the newspapers, the ones that fall from grace because they've screwed up, they've been controlling the narrative. And so now the light's on men. And so men are been asking me for years, Ray, what do I do? Diversity and inclusion leaders have been asking me, Ray, how do I engage the men? And then anybody that doesn't identify as a man, people of color, women, non-binary, and everybody else basically want to support and be supported. So that's what had me end up writing the book. And now, we've got the conference, we've got workshops, we've got consulting, all the typical stuff. So I'll stop there because that gives you the backstory.
Yeah, it's a pretty good backstory now, really. So let's move on to that was the incident that really sparks it as well, really, as well. So we now need to go with how did you get into writing this book? What was the process to get into this? And the conferences as well.
Yeah, so the conference, unbeknownst to me, that was feeding the activist in me. I knew that we needed to have a place for people to come, and being an Italian-American guy, I love to throw a party. And this wasn't a party. It was.
we know about parties. Well, Italy beat England in the World Cup. We're into soccer here, so.
I know.
And beat the whole world in a 100-meter sprint. So there you go. Italians are there at the moment in terms of throwing a party. Anyway, let's not digress here.
It's all right. So the conferences have just kept going, and they're going to keep going, and that's kind of where I got my start, if you will. And with respect to the book, one of the things I know about myself, having written one book before, is when so much is up in here that it makes sense to put oneself through the process of writing a book to get it out, to meet others where they're at. I knew this was on the front end of COVID, actually ahead of COVID. I needed to write this book because I had thought about it earlier, but I wasn't ready yet. So when the stories and the experiences and the timing presented itself, I basically told my partners a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I don't even remember now. I'm gonna focus on writing this book pretty much every day, and I'm gonna be unavailable. And so what that looks like is, blocking out my calendar 8 to 12 every day. Yeah. And then I worked with a book proposal coach. A friend of mine, Mike Robbins, who's an author who's written 5 books, connected me with his agent. And what most people don't realize with a book, there's think of the Tour de France, the bike races. There's these races, but there's 21 of them. It's not one race. And so one race was to decide to write the book and to get somebody to connect me to an agent. Then the agent had to like it. Then I had to write a book proposal. Then she had to pitch it to see if somebody would like it. Then I had to write the book. Then it had to be edited. Then it had to be promoted. Yes. And right now, it's not like, we promote it just in January. This is a 3 or 4 year process. And the game we're playing is a long game, because my goal is to get this book in as many men's hands as possible to create the shift that we all want.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a book out that I went through. I just got it published, kind of like threw money at them and said, well, when I say money, not a lot of money, but just to get it self-published. So it kind of sped it up a bit. But I still do the promotions, which is hard work, So,
it is.
Yeah.
It is work.
That's right. And that's a good analogy, actually. The Tour de France has different stages in it. It's not just that's a bit more to it than a race. It's actually stages, isn't it? Which the book goes through, isn't it? Really. So
that's exactly right. It just occurred to me. I've never used that metaphor, and for those that aren't into sports, I apologize.
No, it's all right. I'm sure people would know anyway. It's regularly done anyway. So yeah, fantastic. So who did you write this book for? I mean, I'm probably guessing that it's from the backstory you told and what's going on in the world, that it is for men.
It is. So there's 3 constituencies. It's for men.
Yeah.
It's for those that are seeking to engage men, wearing leadership hats, DEI hats, etc.
Yeah.
And it's for everybody else who wants to support and be supported, because if you really think about it, you as a man of color, I mean, might you be curious about the possibility of men, white men, choosing to step on the path of being allies to support you or anybody else? I mean,
it's
believable.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, I know in America it's more of a bigger deal than the UK, but it's still a big deal here in the UK as well. And it's something that you say, in some industries or in some situations, it's okay. In the music industry, you see collaboration with some white musicians collaborating with rappers and stuff like that, but in NFL football, maybe there's an issue with the top leadership and with what's happening with, the Black Lives Movement and what's his name now? With who did
Colin
the
Kaepernick was.
Yeah, exactly. So you knew there was an issue in that sport compared to NBA, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to say is it depends on the situation and where there might be more of a collaboration in certain industries. And I certainly can't say that I haven't come across it in the UK, both in the workplace or out in society in general.
Well, one of the things, I was working with a large company, and I was working with 30 of their men from the UK. And when we got to the topic of privilege, there was a decent number of men in the room that initially said, I don't have privilege. I've worked really hard. I grew up very poor. And I first of all, I acknowledged that. And then I said, so let's go a little further on this. Let's seek to understand that privilege is not a demonized word. Let's humanize it. And let's humanize it by understanding what it is and what it isn't. Mm-hmm. So if I say to you that privilege is akin to advantage, some of which is earned, some of which is unearned, and I'll give you an example of the unearned. And I'm like, I don't know for those of you who believe in God, but It's not like before I came out of this earth, I said, I think I want to be white and I want to be a man. I didn't get to choose that. So that's called an accident of birth. So imagine, if you're a man of color and you are walking down the street in the United States, or even in England, when there's been incidents where color difference that white folk don't understand. I was able to help them understand that there's things that they're never going to have to deal with because they're white. And then there was an opening. Then they understood. Then they began to understand about the burden and the difficulties of everyday life, let alone inside of workplace culture, that people that don't identify as white or male have to go through. So what happens when a white man becomes aware of that, most good white dudes will have some empathy and will say anything from like, I had no idea, to what can I do? That's where we want them to go, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, you said in the beginning of our interview, you said this is the book was an eye-opener. And I said, you know what? It's an eye-opener, but I wrote it to be a heart-opener, because we're all human at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. It's the wrong word you're saying.
A heart-opener.
Yeah, heart opener. Yeah.
For the book to be a heart opener. Most men have not had schooling, let alone coaching or modeling on what that means.
Yeah. Well, would you like to give a bit of that? What it means to maybe some of the gentlemen that could be listening to this?
Yeah. So
or not
one
so
of the
gentlemen.
things. So when I was as I've been going through my own work as a man, learning about what has unconsciously driven my behavior, I recognized these principles, these aspects that I was learning and embodying that I needed to get out, and I wrote about in the book. And these are what I call the heart-based leadership principles. And so there's 6 of them. The first is emotional literacy. Yeah. And so one of the emotional literacy is basically to have a relationship to our emotions, to not walk around unconsciously in reaction anytime I get triggered, right? And to understand, I have sadness or I have fear. A lot of men stuff those feelings, and this usually happens because of family of origin stuff that has happened when they grew up. And so they aren't able to distinguish between getting triggered now and what happened when they were a little kid versus present day. That's emotional literacy. The second one is vulnerability. Vulnerability, Brene Brown defines it as uncertainty and, taking risk. And vulnerability gets a bad rap by men in that most men think that it's a sign of weakness. Well, I'm here to say that it's actually a sign of strength. It happens to be one of my superpowers. And so vulnerability engenders trust. So that's vulnerability. The third is authenticity, being your true self versus being performative. The fourth one is accountability, which is taking responsibility for my words, choices, and actions and their consequences, intended or not. The fifth one is inclusivity, including everybody. And the last one is love. And love I define as seeing, hearing, valuing, respecting another person for who they are. To me, that's love. So these principles, for any of your listeners who identify as men, if you're in a relationship, heterosexual or other, or you have kids, what I'm speaking to shouldn't be that much of a surprise. All I'm really doing is giving voice to it and inviting men to think about this. And, I'm 59 years old, and so this is a little harder for my generation, but the younger generation, they're evolving. And so they're like,
I'm 57,
I don't want to be like...
so I'm your generation.
There you go. So it's it's one of those things where I may be speaking the obvious, but it's not that obvious to a lot of people. So that's the heart-based stuff that I'm talking about. Because at the end of the day, we're people amongst people inside our companies. And when we start to understand what's going on around us, maybe that someone's hurt or offended as a result of what we said or did or didn't say or didn't do, we get to decide is that how we want to be experienced by other people? Right? So this is not a US thing. This is why I'm able to bring these concepts, around the world. And that's I'm starting to get requests.
There's certainly some masculinized or masculine cultured countries. I mean, I stayed, Latin countries. A lot of that is kind of masculine, kind of led. You can see
machismo.
So, well, I don't want to say Italy, but even Latin America, and things like that. There's this kind of masculine. But anyway, let's not go down that road because we'll start digressing with what your work is, and let's go more into the book. Let's have a quick synopsis of the book, and I know there's 8 chapters. We'll have an overview of the chapters before we tell everyone what work you're doing right now.
Yeah. So I realized when I wrote my first book that once again I was inviting the reader to go on a journey, and so what I did in my first book is when I wrote out there were 7 roadmap steps. And I said, you know what, before you go on a journey, there's things you need to do first. So once again, on the front end of the book, I think it's simple steps you can do right now. Because if you're curious about this, you want to know what you can do right now. So in the beginning of the book, I set a lot of context. So the Set to Win chapter does that to kind of lay the groundwork, if you will, to introduce concepts like heart-based leadership, basically tell them what you're going to tell them. So I'm going to take you through the 4 steps of the Allies journey. This is what you can expect. Along the way, when I was interviewing Mike Kaufman, a white CEO of Cardinal Health, they're a global company, S&P, they're one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. He said, have you talked to any other men other than white men around masculinity? And I said, I've been thinking about that. And he goes, you'd probably be well served to do that. And so I ended up, towards the end of this whole process, I ended up writing the chapter, 2 Often Excluded Voices of Masculinity. I interviewed a black trans man, an Asian gay man, a white heterosexual man, a white gay man, a black heterosexual man. And I asked them, tell me what healthy masculinity is to you, and what would you want our readers to know? Because if I'm going to write this book for men, I wanted other voices to be included. So it was a good thing that I did that. So that's at the front end of the book. And so once we got through simple steps to take right now, I think I wrote the chapter Set to Win. Once again, more context. And then the whole book and the work I do, the Better Man conferences, are centered around what we call the 4 steps of the Allies journey. And the 4 steps of the Allies journey, the first one, in what I call dude language, is acknowledge our stuff. And what that means is acknowledge our bias, acknowledge and examine our privilege, understand and acknowledge our emotions. And then there's this thing called the man box, those set of unwritten rules that most, if not all of us men have subscribed to, that we need to debunk them, and we basically need to step into a new rewrite on what it means to be a man, hence healthy masculinity. And so that's just the first step. So if we were to contextualize that first step, awareness. So that's first step. The second step is listen with empathy and compassion. Now, what this step does, it opens up the door to presence the lived experiences of others. This really helps men, or anybody for that matter, seeking to be an ally to anyone, to understand and to center the experience of another. And so this is where, what I often say, this is where roots of empathy begin to sprout for men. When they say, I had no idea, what can I do? The third step is take responsibility for the impact of my bias and unexamined privilege, and when necessary, clean it up. This step opens up the door to clean up conversations. It opens up the door for intention versus impact to help people understand what that's about. And that ultimately, we contextualize this step as accountability. And then the fourth step is commit to new actions and behaviors. And the chapter I wrote there I had a little fun with that talk, act, and think like a man. So I went through the do's and the don'ts. Like, this is what mansplaining is. This is what monopolizing is. This is what manterrupting is. And here's how you work around them. And after I did that chapter, the next chapter was the multi-year game plan. Like for DEI leaders. Like, so how do you engage men? Well, here's like 12 different ways to do that. And then I said, you know what? Well, what if you're a guy reading the book and this topic's really important to you, but you're not a senior leader or you're not a DEI leader? What can you do? So I spoke to that. So in essence, you know, anytime you write a book like this, people are going to read it. They're going to begin to understand that there's a there. And then hopefully the idea when I wrote the book was to help people start on their journey. And if they end up coming to our conference, great. If they end up saying, Ray, can you do a keynote? Great. You know, what where the real juice is when an enterprise, large company says, we want to put intention and attention on our men, and we understand that this is really, really important, and we can enter into a relationship with them and figure out all the different ways that we're going to make this a successful culture change for them, with the men not as white knights, but just stepping in and doing their part and getting off the sidelines. Yeah.
Well, this book's already released at the moment, so
correct.
Where can people find this book? Is it?
If you went to showingupbook.com,
yeah,
they can go there, and we have a bonus, which is a virtual ticket to one of our Better Man conferences. So there's a few steps for them to follow. So that's one place to go. If they're not interested in the ticket, then just go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon or certain virtual bookstores. You'll find the book. It's all over the web. Yeah. And I think it's in London's or in England's Amazon, I was told. There's an audio book. There's an ebook. Yes.
Yeah, I had to listen to a bit of the audio on the Amazon, the sample bit. Sounds great, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Audio is really obviously this podcast. I don't want to plug it too much, but obviously audio has really been since this pandemic has really exploded, hasn't it? Really, so
yes,
audio books too. So, but not to say text shouldn't be, books in general.
I understand.
So no, let's hear what you're up to now at the moment. I know you've got this conference coming up in 1st of June, and some phone calls that people can dive into as well and stuff like that. What?
So this year, our intention, and I'll advise your readers to go to www.bettermanconference.com, and if you scroll down the bottom, you can sign up for our newsletter. And the whole point of our newsletter is to be part of our community, and we inform you. We send an occasional blog. And we're going to be doing what we call the Showing Up series, which will be a once a month community call where we'll feature guests, and we'll follow along the book to a certain degree, and we will do, I think, probably a 9 a.m. Pacific start time, maybe 8, so that our friends across the pond can listen in. And so that's kind of the idea, and then also for the Better Man conference, we'll send stuff out. So when you're a part of that list, if there's a podcast interview that we sent out, hey, Ray was interviewed. So it's a good way for them to stay connected. We won't hammer your followers. So so the conference for New York, which is going to be both live and streaming, the idea is June 1st. And then in San Francisco, the first week of November. We don't have a date yet.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. It's really great that obviously I have a lot of guests like you doing the work for men to actually show up, as the name of your book is, Showing Up. But, and really, sort of, I don't know, just really give up. I don't know what it is, the ego or trying to think of the right word to use now. privilege, if you like. That's what you're saying. It's a male privilege. You know, give that up and really, you know, sort of help, you know, or give a heart, as you say.
What I would say is use your privilege. Don't give it up. Use your privilege, and stay connected to your heart. And if there was anything to give up, it would be the outdated book of what it means to be a man. Like those rules, like men make all the decisions, or don't show emotion, or real men are heterosexual, or real men play sports. All that BS. Give that up. It's not serving you or anybody around you.
Yeah, there's some real old dating books, dating technique books that are saying that, really. Probably some not so old that are still saying that, really.
Yes.
So, because that tends to kind of really sort of keep that culture going as well, doesn't it, really, which doesn't help.
It does.
So, yeah.
It does.
Well, excellent, Ray. Ray, it's been a great pleasure speaking to this show, and I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your work with my audience today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dave.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.